Welcome to this explainer on the origins of humankind, where we are diving into Sapiens, the secret weapon of the deadliest species. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating and honestly a kind of unsettling story. We're going to look at exactly how an unremarkable ape, just hanging out in a corner of Africa, managed to rise up and completely conquer the globe. Really, how did Homo sapiens become the masters of planet Earth?
Okay, let's just jump right into this with a mind-blowing fact that honestly gets overlooked way too often. If you were to travel back in time, say, 100,000 years ago, you wouldn't just find one human species walking around. There were actually at least 6 distinct human species coexisting on Earth at the exact same time. Just like we have different species of bears or pigs today, the planet was once home to a whole diverse family of humans. You had Neanderthals in Europe, Homo erectus in Asia. We really weren't alone out there.
But to understand our spectacular rise to dominance, we first have to look at our incredibly humble beginnings. Section 1. An insignificant animal, surviving in the middle of the food chain. Looking at this timeline, you realize that for millions of years, early humans were basically just making do right in the middle of the food chain. We were hunting smaller creatures, gathering whatever plants we could forage, and honestly, spending a whole lot of time terrified of being eaten by larger, faster predators. For this incredibly long stretch of history, humans had no more impact on their environment than, say, gorillas, fireflies, or jellyfish. We were literally just another creature trying to survive on the savanna.
Now check this out, because it's pretty wild. The very thing we prize most today, our intelligence, was actually a massive energy drain for our ancestors. A Homo sapiens brain accounts for only about 2 to 3% of our total body weight, right? But it hogs a staggering 25% of the body's energy when at rest. Compare that to other apes, who only use about 8%. So to fuel this massive thinking machine, ancient humans had to spend way more time looking for food, and our muscles actually atrophied. We basically traded biceps for neurons.
So around 70,000 years ago, Homo sapiens finally began to spread out of Africa and started bumping into those other human species we talked about, like the Neanderthals. Anthropologists have 2 main theories about what happened next. First, you've got the interbreeding theory, which suggests that as we spread, we peacefully intermingled and mated with them. Then there's the replacement theory, which paints a much darker picture of violent replacement, where sapiens completely wiped the others out. Now, modern DNA evidence does show we carry small amounts of Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA, so at least some interbreeding definitely happened. But the undeniable fact remains: sapiens survived and every other human species vanished.
So why did we survive while they all perished? Well, that brings us to Section 2, the secret of fiction. This was the absolute superpower of the cognitive revolution.
This cognitive revolution was born from a sudden, massive leap in our language capabilities roughly 70,000 years ago. Our new language let us gossip, which is huge. It let us share intricate social details about who to trust and who is a cheat. But there's a ceiling to this. Sociological research proves that the natural limit of a group bonded purely by intimate gossip caps out at roughly 150 people. Once a group gets larger than that, the social order just destabilizes. You simply can't intimately know more than 150 individuals.
Right, so the crucial point is, how do you cross that 150-person limit to build massive cities and empires? Sapiens did it by inventing something extraordinary: fiction. And I don't mean campfire stories for entertainment. I'm talking about shared myths, things like gods, nations, human rights, or money. None of these exist outside our collective imagination. But because millions of strangers can all believe in the exact same imagined reality, they can cooperate flexibly on an unprecedented scale.
To put that into perspective, think about modern lawyers for a second. As the quote points out, they tell far stranger tales than tribal shamans ever did. Take a modern limited liability company, like the car manufacturer Peugeot. Peugeot isn't its factories, its employees, or its cars. If every single factory burned to the ground tomorrow and all the employees quit, the legal entity of Peugeot would still exist. It's a legal fiction, created by lawyers, much like tribal shamans used to conjure up guardian spirits. Believing in these fictions is literally what allows hundreds of thousands of total strangers across the globe to cooperate perfectly and build millions of cars.
Okay, so how did these ancient myth-making storytellers actually live day to day? Let's move to Section 3, the forager's world, life before the agricultural revolution. Before we farmed, we foraged, and that lifestyle shaped the very DNA we carry around today.
Have you ever wondered why it's so incredibly hard to resist eating an entire pint of ice cream or a massive bag of greasy chips? Well, evolutionary psychology gives us the gorging gene theory. For an ancient forager wandering the savannah, finding a tree full of rare, sweet, ripe figs meant one thing: gorge instantly before the local baboons strip it bare. High-calorie food was incredibly rare. Today, we live in these high-rise apartments with stuffed refrigerators, but our DNA still genuinely thinks we are starving on the savannah. So yeah, you can blame your ancestors next time you finish off that pint.
Now, while they definitely didn't have modern medicine, ancient foragers in many ways lived in what some experts call the original affluent society. I mean, people living in the Kalahari Desert today still only work about 35 to 45 hours a week hunting and gathering. Ancient foragers actually had a vastly varied and nutritious diet. They were eating dozens of different foods instead of just relying on a single crop like wheat. And because they were constantly moving in small bands, they were largely free from the terrible infectious epidemics that later devastated crowded agricultural cities.
But we have to be really careful not to romanticize this era. The foragers' world was incredibly unforgiving. Child mortality was exceptionally high, and a minor scrape could easily be a death sentence. To ensure the survival of the band, groups sometimes had to make horrifying choices. Anthropologists studying the Ashe people in Paraguay recorded how bands occasionally had to abandon or even kill the sick, the elderly, or unwanted children, just so the rest of the group could keep moving and survive.
And what about warfare? Were these ancient foragers peaceful or exceptionally violent? We really have to look at the evidence impartially here, and it turns out it heavily depended on where and when you looked. For instance, out of 400 ancient skeletons found in Portugal, only 2 showed clear marks of violence, painting a remarkably peaceful picture. But then, you look at Jabal Sahaba in Sudan, where a 12,000-year-old cemetery revealed that a staggering 40% of the skeletons had arrowheads and spear points embedded right in their bones. Human nature clearly allowed for both absolute tranquility and brutal massacre.
Armed with this incredible cognitive ability to cooperate in massive numbers through fiction, sapiens soon turned their sights way beyond the Afro-Asian landmass. Which leads us to our final section. Section 4, the deadliest species and the invasion of the outer world.
About 45,000 years ago, sapiens pulled off something completely unprecedented in the animal kingdom. Living in the Indonesian archipelago, they somehow figured out how to build boats and maneuver them across huge stretches of open sea. They didn't wait around for millions of years to evolve flippers like seals or whales. They just used their minds and their tools to cross the ocean and land in Australia. It was a completely alien ecosystem, totally untouched by humans.
And the moment Homo sapiens stepped onto that Australian beach, they instantly jumped to the very top of the food chain. The ecological impact was immediate and it was catastrophic. Out of the 24 Australian animal species weighing 50 kilograms or more, 23 became completely extinct shortly after we arrived. Think about that. We broke and rearranged the entire Australian food chain in a mere blink of evolutionary time.
Australia was once this absolute wonderland of lost giants. Imagine, if you will, kangaroos that weighed 200 kilograms and stood 2 meters tall. There are marsupial lions the size of modern tigers roaming the plains. You had the dipperdondon, a massive 2.5-ton wombat, living right alongside dragon-like lizards and flightless birds twice the size of ostriches. Sapiens, using their cooperative hunting and their sheer mastery of fire, completely eradicated this strange, beautiful universe.
We almost always tend to think of ecological destruction as a modern phenomenon, right? Something born out of the Industrial Revolution. But the reality is, our ancestors were completely reshaping and destroying ecosystems tens of thousands of years ago. So I want to leave you with this final thought. Considering our track record as an ecological serial killer using only stone tools and fire long before we even invented the wheel, what on earth are we capable of next? Thank you so much for exploring this with us, and keep questioning the history that brought us here.